Let's begin with an analogy this time. Imagine that you're going to visit a friend or family far off and you need to take an airplane, but you recognize that the statistics for airline crashes are 50%. You're not going to get on an airplane with that kind of statistic, and yet marriages are crashing at the rate of 50%. 50% is the divorce level. Now, I'm Paul Friedman. I founded the Marriage Foundation, and our approach to marriage is so vastly different from the traditional approach. Basically, we realize here that marriage is above and beyond Western psychology, and Western psychology is the predominant way of quote unquote healing marriages. So this particular topic, which is about being tired in your marriage, being tired of being married maybe, and I hope not, but maybe that's going on, or something else, and it isn't your fault. Let me explain. I discovered that there are three principal killers of marriage. Number one is predominant everywhere. Almost every marriage suffers from this until you learn how to transcend it. And that killer of marriage, and I am going to give you the other two, but that killer of marriage is called, or I call it, overfamiliarity. Now, what do I mean by that? When you live with somebody day in and day out, you know what they're going to think before they know what they're going to think. Isn't it true? And essentially, we get bored with them. And that's not even the worst part. The worst part is we start treating them the way you may have treated your sibling when you were a kid, or the way they treated you. In other words, with disrespect. We lose respect because we are over familiar with our spouse. Not a good thing. So it isn't your fault. But here is what's going on with that. What's going on is that you have not learned, and please stay with me, because a lot of people get shocked by this and they go, whoa, that's not true. They become kind of resentful at the insinuation that you're not loving them correctly. But unfortunately, this is what is usually true. What do I mean by that? Well, you see, even the Greeks identified different kinds of love. They described the highest love as agape. And they don't go on to explain where it's derived from, but they do describe that it is that unique love between husband and wife, or they're Greek, as I said, or between dear friends. But what it really is, where I want you to start thinking, is about that love that you feel, that you know is coming from the heart. You see, Western psychology, which is one of the greatest destroyers of marriages that they try to help, because I don't want to get into this in a lengthy discussion, but basically the problem began with the father of Western psychology, Sigmund Freud, who was a drug addicted, and I don't mean to harp on him, we love everybody, but he was an atheist. And so what happened was he and his partner, Carl Jung, went to India to discover psychology, because there's a psychology in India too. And what he discovered and what Jung discovered was a psychology that revolved around us being souls and identifying the mind not as ourself, but identifying the mind as a component of ours. In other words, it's a possession. So let me rephrase that. You are a soul and you have a mind. You're not a mind who has a soul. You are the soul and you have a mind and you have a body. What that means is two things that are very important. Number one, is the emotional love that is of the mind is fleeting. It's here today, gone tomorrow. The overwhelming love of the soul, which you have felt, is what marriage is all about. That overwhelming love. Now, it takes practice to call it back up. Let me give you a great example. And I use this example because it happens for everyone. When you go to a wedding, there is a moment where everyone starts to cry, including you, where you feel this gushing from the heart. This liquid love is just rising and it takes you over. And within a second or two, our mind jumps in and starts talking to us about how pretty the bride is, how handsome the groom is, and what am I going to eat later? I hope they have a good meal. The mind jumps in and it takes over. We don't hear about this in Western psychology when we want to go get our marriage healed, but it is the truth. The mind is a possession. It needs to be brought under our control so that natural flow, because that love that you feel at that moment, that is what is real. Because we as souls, that is real. We as the mind, it's kind of imaginary, to be perfectly honest with you. Now, if that analogy or that experience doesn't resonate with you, how about when you've looked at your kids when they're asleep? They're angels, aren't they? They're so beautiful. You can just hold them and crush them in your arms. They're not loving you back. There's no reciprocation here. That love that you're feeling is the true love of the soul. Why do we get tired of our marriage? Because even though we experienced that true love of the soul when we were reunited with our soulmate, the mind pulls us away from that. What's the response that we should have? To recall that love, to bring ourselves back into that place of deep devotional love. And other times, avoid all the negativity that comes up in our minds, which is mostly reactionary stuff that gets stored in there as a means of protection. Put all that aside. Focus on cultivating that love. When you learn how to cultivate that love, wow. Now, going back to the analogy of the airplane, you would think that if we didn't take care of airplanes, really learn about airplanes, really learn about flying in general, we would give up on flying pretty soon because those airplanes would just keep falling out of the sky. How ironic is it that we all get married? We don't all fly on airplanes, but all of us get married. And yet, how much attention is given to learning about marriage so our marriages don't fall from the sky? Because the truth is that marriage, like it was in the beginning when you very, very first met your soulmate, it was like floating, isn't it? I'm here to tell you, when you learn about marriage, and I don't care how bad your marriage has gotten to this day, when you learn about marriage, when you learn how to guide your thoughts, in other words, controlling your mind, when you learn how to cultivate that love, and that's what we teach. We teach it in my books. I have a couple of beautiful marriage help books, and we have a course, an online course for you, which is extremely effective, extremely not expensive, and is extremely going to make you really have a great marriage. I'm Paul Friedman. I founded the Marriage Foundation. I'm glad you stopped by. Leave a comment. Many people these days have been writing questions in the comment section, and I take the time to answer them personally. However, if you have a question and you want some help, no problem. Go to our website. We have a free offer, continual. We always have had this, where you could write in for free to a very well-trained marriage counselor. I have trained these marriage counselors myself in our ways, which are very different, and they will help you. Again, like the video, subscribe. We have over 100,000 subscribers. I'd love you to join our family. God bless you and take care. Thank you.